Congoers and cosplayers, what are your cringiest and creepiest con experiences? Uber driver here. I was driving in Atlanta during DragonCon and I picked up a dude dressed up as a refrigerator. I guess he got tired of running. Cringiest. My husband cosplayed as Darth Vader around the time EPVI came out. He was very popular because he's 6'4" and built like a linebacker. Lots of requests for pictures. This guy who looked like he lived in his mother's basement came up dressed as a Jedi. And by Jedi I mean he was wearing a bathrobe and carrying an expensive looking lightsaber prop. He wanted to be recorded fighting Darth Vader. So he hands me his camera, didn't even ask. Takes his stance. And proceeds to have an aggressive lightsaber duel with my husband. Where most people took about 15 seconds to get their poses photographed. This guy dueled for about 2 minutes. My stomach was in knots the whole time from the awkwardness. Darth husband eventually had to force choke him to end it. I used to sell art in the artist alley at local cons. And I never got to walk around too much since I had to watch over my table. But the people who come up to you can be plenty creepy and cringy. I had one lady come up to me while I was drawing and go on a rant about how this con would never be as good as Dragon Con. Which honestly, who cares? She was also flinging spittle all over my drawing with apparently zero awareness. Also, women artists at the tables near me. Always having to fend off creepy lurky dudes who just won't go away. It's sad. A massive and amazingly plotted out Sailor Moon panel was completely derailed by these two kids. They were about 10 and 12. A little young considering it was way late in the night. But it wasn't an adult panel so they got in. Constant barrage of questions. Anytime they started talking it'd lead to a 5-minute rant on how their classmates at school don't understand what being an otaku is like. The panelist was clearly flustered but wasn't sure what to do about this so she answered them and let them go on. She got to cover maybe 20% of her panel. About half of the room of 70-ish people left because it was just too much. This is why panels need a moderator. I was standing in the artist's alley talking to some people at a table about the character I was dressed as. When some crazy person literally jumped on me from behind shrieking something about pretty cosplay. Then he grabbed my ass and ran away making bizarre noises. It was rather unsettling and pissed me off considerably. This happened just last year actually. Me and my girlfriend were cosplaying Blitz and IQ from Rainbow Six Siege at a relatively small con. Things were fantastic at the start. Lots of "oh hey guys can I get a picture?" Just felt pretty good to get some recognition. We had worked really hard on the costumes and even made Blitz's flash shield with working lights. A few hours in and some guy in a costume I didn't recognize shouts Blitz, "I need to fight you." Dot. Sure dude, we'll pose for some fight pictures. No big deal. Well, he didn't really grasp the concept of posing and started actually punching my shield, which was made of some relatively thin pegboard material and the view slot was just plastic. I told him to tone it down and just put his fist against it so it looked like he was hitting it in the picture. His response? "It's a shield dude. It'll be fine." And punches the plastic right out of the shield. I'm pissed. My girlfriend is pissed. The dude is ecstatic. He throws up his fists and battle cries before running off. FCKU. Dude. I went to my first ever convention at the age of 13. I didn't dress up or anything. I just wanted to take pictures of good cosplayers. My friend and I spotted a very handsome and flawless Moroku cosplayer. Inuyasha was my favorite anime at the time. I was ecstatic and my friend pushed me in his direction to take a picture with him. I scooted close to him and, staying true to character, he groped my ass. It was the best goddamn day of my life. Years later, I realized how creepy it is to be 13. Groped by a 20-year-old. And have it be the highlight of my middle school days. Edit. Middle school. Comma the highlight of my middle class days. There's a capitalism joke somewhere in there. Teenage Homestuck cosplayers laying in the middle of the walkways outright dry humping and making out. When they were asked to move, they made a huge fit about it, accusing the staff of being homophobic. The Homestuck fanbase is super weird. One time I was cosplaying as Felicia from Darkstalkers, a character who is a cat girl. This girl at a con just ran up out of nowhere screaming "Glomp the Nico" as she launched herself at me and practically tackled me. And she stood there hugging me without permission as I tried to extricate myself. And she stank really badly. Also, same con and costume. Some obese guy who was watching a door to check for badges told me I couldn't come in until I hugged him. Volunteered for large cons for 15 years. Was on break talking to a friend cosplaying as Sailor Mars. She's an attractive girl and was sitting with myself and a con chair for a different con when a young male shuffled up. He opened by complimenting her costume. He then followed up with "I've fantasized about you since I was 13. I facepalmed and there was a pause and he just sort of shuffled away. Sailor Mars continued on our original conversation. I can only imagine the horrors she has had to put up with. For me it was last year at the Sydney Smash Anime Convention. I saw the Dark Magician girl figure where you can see the panty shot at a stall and this dude was just hovering it for ages and looking at it in different angles. Then started speaking to me about the underwear she was wearing. Then went off about hentai. Wasn't trolling, this was a genuine conversation starter for this guy. A lot of cons now promote inclusiveness, i.e. you should cosplay as who you want, etc. My husband and I were walking around, and he saw a girl wearing a great costume. She was with a group of people. He said, "Oh, that's really great." For whatever reason, the group openly mocked him. Like, full on mocking, mimicking his words. Everything. I'd get it if they were teens. But everyone there was at least 25 plus. And my husband and I are in our 30s. Seriously. What? Last year, my then fiancée cosplayed as Kamala Khan. This one really creepy guy approached us and started up a conversation with her about how great her costume was. Then he spent about 10 minutes talking her ear off about all the people that he wanted Kamala Khan to have sex with in the comics. Dude. We don't care if you think that seeing her with Gwenpool or Wolverine would be hot. It's pretty creepy. He asked her who she wanted to see have sex with Kamala. Which got the response no one. She's 16. Meaning the character. Not the fiancé. That didn't really stop him though. We ended up having to walk away from him mid-sentence because he wasn't getting the hint. Edit. The ending and some clarification. It's like being socially oblivious is his superpower. At PAX Prime this past summer my daughter and I were dressed as Link and Zelda. A man dressed as Ganon approached my daughter, who in her Zelda outfit looked to be about 17-18. But she was only 14. And told her so. "Why don't you and I head to my castle while my buddies take care of the old lady?" Sadly my sword wasn't quite sharp enough to bisect him. That's not even a good line. The cringiest thing and creepiest things I've ever seen as a con actually both happened at a local convention held at a university. The cringiest one was a guy participating in a cosplay contest as his original steampunk character, which would have probably been fine on its own if he didn't answer all of the judges' questions on stage awkwardly in character. The creepiest thing I saw requires some context. When we were at this same contest, the winner was a guy who was clearly in his 30s or 40s doing his own OC, which was a samurai with a mask covering his face. He talked to my girlfriend and complimented her on her outfit and he seemed really nice every time we talked to him. But a day after the convention we found out that they revoked his award because they found he was sexually harassing young girls earlier that night and registered for the convention under a fake name. It was a local convention so most of the people there knew each other. But no one had any idea who this guy was. I sell some original comics and usually have a table. But the story that sticks out to me is that at a con there was a kid who was about 14 and pretty nerdy. He went on and on to us about a vendor having ice cream planets. I guess they were in Firefly. These were balls of ice cream on the end of a string that you had to eat while holding it up in the air. He made a point every time he had one to walk past our table making eye contact with us as he tried to eat this ice cream that was on a string. That food sounds problematic. Some Deadpool cosplayer was running around doing silly poses and trying to be witty and charming until he tripped in front of a large crowd and landed pretty hard on his knee. It was obvious he was hurt. So someone went to help him and he screams FCK off as you can see tears soaking through his mask. Full grown man. Jumping around in the Cringiest attempt at being Deadpool. Smashes his knee. Lashes out and cries. This one sounds more in Deadpool spirit if anything. Most cons happen in very urban areas. I always cringe when I am making the long walk from parking lot to convention center in costume because the random suited people on the street are usually just minding their own business when they see me. An adult dressed as a F-King Jedi. Going about my own way. It's definitely embarrassing having people see you dressed up with no context. But it's all okay once you make it into the building and everyone already knows what to expect. The cringiest thing I have seen another person do was go on stage for a costume contest and make a joke that nobody got in the entire audience of hundreds of people. There was dead silence for a solid 15 seconds or so, then the room filled with hesitant sympathy chuckles. Creepiest con experience was when some guy tried to grab my little stepbrother's hand and walk off with him. I've been pretty lucky. Especially as a chick cosplaying Poison Ivy, which is admittedly a pretty SI costume, corset, heels, etc. No super hardcore harassment. The worst thing, I've experienced are people, men, getting really close or trying to put their hands on inappropriate areas during requested photos. Like, I'm okay with a photo but no. You can't put your hands on my ass. I've also had people ask me to leave my boyfriend and come with them. Even if only for a night. Cringe dude. Definitely no. Used a day to cosp guess. I went once and saw a guy dressed as Tennant's doctor. And these teenage girls walked by in Sailor Moon outfits and he looked at them and said, oh yeah. I'd like to be bigger on their insides. It was the worst. Edit. Clarified the girls were pretty young looking. Are you sure he wasn't dressed as Kilgrave? I was dressed up as the blue-haired girl from Me. And some guy asked me why I wasn't dressed as the naked version of her. The creepiest thing I ever saw was a SI genderband Batman, mind you. Not a Batgirl or Batwoman, which wasn't the problem. That was asked to pose for a picture with his family's child. Kid was maybe 6 or 7. And the pose the parents wanted? The kid on the ground with Batman's foot on him like he was pinned down. Ended up looking like pedo BDSM. Read genderband as gingerbread. I thought, well, it's different. Many years ago, I went to a con dressed in a Babylon 5 Corps uniform. I got cornered in an autograph line by the stereotypical creepy nasal voiced Trekkie who went on and on about all the reasons why DS9 was totally way better than B5 blah 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 etc. No amount of that's your opinion and I respect that. I happen to prefer B5 feet would shut him up. Dude was mortally offended that I liked one show better than another. Thank heaven my friends showed up shortly thereafter and saved me from having to listen to the guy any further. I will teach you 2 words that will help you get out of any situation you do not want to be in. The best part is that they are known to people from all corners of the globe. FCK off. Full stop. Not as bad as most of these stories, but this happened at a con last year. Had a 6+ tall dude dressed as an extremely accurate Dark Knight Joker glance down my dress and say, well, hello beautiful right by my ear in a just as accurate voice. I have a strong stomach for scary shit, but Jiminy Christmas that creeped the ever loving hell out of me. Obligatory wow this blew up edit. I dug up the business card he gave me and he has a Jigsaw page. I guess there's a market for Joker impersonators to perform at events. Happy birthday, Timmy. Wanna see a magic trick? I went to Star-Lord to Comic Con this past year and in general, things were pretty great. The one weird moment was when I was waiting in line to get something autographed and this girl who was like 13. Turns to me and says, "Hey. Our characters are engaged. Can I get a picture with you?" Which? Like, totally innocuous. It's just weird because I was 28 at the time and was immediately thinking someone was going to ask me to take a seat and have a very serious talk. In general though, that's about as weird as anything has gotten when I've done cosplay. People are mostly really cool and get in the spirit of it. I did that when I was cosplaying as Padma Amidala at Celebration. They have mock wedding ceremonies and I wanted to find an Anakin to take a wedding photo with. Instead I found a Vader. Darth Maul presided over us. And I have a badass photo to show for it. As well as a new friend 6ish years later. Every Comic Con in Arizona at least one guy will go as Pyramid Head and whoever I'm going with will always take pictures with him. One year he brought 2 of the Silent Hill nurses with him and for some reason everyone would avoid the trio. My family approached him to ask for a picture which he allowed. I was dressed in a reboot Star Trek Uhura costume. A man in a uniform from the original movies comes up and asks to take a picture with me. I say yes. He takes a normal picture and then, before I could do anything, he grabs my leg and throws it over himself. This uniform was short enough that my ass underwear was definitely visible in that pic. He thanked me and sped off while my dickhole ex laughed about the whole thing. It was so fast I didn't even react until he'd left. It was a drive-by grope. An eternity with nerds. It's the Pasadena Star Trek convention all over again. Well, I saw 2 furries in full costume laying on a bench in the hotel lobby caressing each other, so did it. I should say that most furries are actually really cool people and fursuits are not made for sex. But in rare cases there are bad apples who act weird. I had a furry roommate in college for a year. He was a beanpole and I'd be surprised if he weighed more than 100 pounds. His girlfriend was this giantess who was almost as tall as me and definitely weighed more. And I'm a big dude at 6'3" and 240 pounds. They were both furries. And she'd be over every Friday night. She'd put on some cat ears. He'd put on a foxtail. And they'd just f-king lick each other in our living room. Needless to say I got a new roommate. Worst one I have is I went to a con as Loki. I got tackled by someone. It was around all the hype for the original Avengers movie. So, was an interesting day. The infamous glomping. A very cringy risk when playing a character with a large female fanbase. The glomping and the hugs and stuff. I don't cosplay anymore, but when I did it was the randos that would scream your character name and then just hug you. Like it's cool. It'll take a picture of you and do funny poses with you. You know, when you give me like a second to prepare. But almost tackling me without any warning is pretty annoying and a bit creepy. I'm a guy. I cosplayed guy characters. Haven't in years. But I will say besides that, I loved everyone telling me how great my cosplay looked, or running into other characters from the anime I was cosplaying was always fun. Except for Beer Gut Natsu. He stopped me and I thought he wanted a picture. But instead berated my costume and then invited me to his fairy tale podcast panel. Hard pass, buddy. I remember attending a small con that was happening at the same convention center as a gun show. It was amusing to watch the cameo-clad, ballcap wearing, bearded rednecks clutching their guns and watching the colorful parade of cosplayers stream in and out of the center. Needless to say, both sides were nervously watching the other with confusion. Good times. I also had a cringe moment at Assen about 10 years ago. A Pledgeeks was one of my favorite webcomics and the artist, Hawk, was there. He had just signed some artwork for me and I was trying to have a conversation with him when this guy comes up, stares at me, writes something in a notebook, and then tells me I'll be dead soon because he wrote my name in his death note. He then proceeded to interrupt me anytime I tried to talk to Hawk and only wanted to discuss Death Note. Have hated that anime ever since because that dickhead ruined my chance to talk to an artist I admired about his work.